everyone. I'm Dana Perino, along with Judge Janine Pirro, Jessica Tarlov, Jesse Waters, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City. This is The Five. Vice President Kamala Harris in the hot seat, finally forced to answer some tough questions. The presidential nominee getting a little riled up with Bret Baier in her first ever Fox News interview.
If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
actually don't.
If you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
You said repeatedly that the border was secure. When in your mind did it start becoming a crisis?
I think we've had a broken immigration system transcending, by the way, Donald Trump's administration, even before. Let's all be honest about that.
Bret Baier pressing Harris on the elephant in the room, or rather the one who got pushed out of the room. That would be President Biden.
So you're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like every new president that comes in to office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas.
When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room, and he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And
but
Donald Trump
but
is.
You
Record number of people watched last night, Jesse, over 7 million, and that was just on the television.
You know what she's really good at?
What?
Not taking any responsibility. She's actually excellent at that. If you wanted to watch someone for 25 minutes not take any responsibility, last night was amazing. She is a typical lawyer who enjoys arguing but doesn't have a point. She said nothing bad happened over the last 4 years, but nothing good happened either. She never mentioned one accomplishment over the last 4 years, not chips, not inflation reduction, nothing. And if you're Biden, you're watching this interview, you're like, okay, thank you. This was really bad. She did not look presidential to me. I remember even in contentious interviews where like O'Reilly would interview Barack Obama and he was pointing in his face. And Obama had this charming way where he'd be like, Bill, calm down. Like, that's not how things work. And creates this sort of connection with the interviewer. And she doesn't have the ability to do that. She's ice cold. She's unlikable, and her arguments are incoherent. At one point, she said, Donald Trump has to take responsibility for everything that happens in his administration. She goes, but I don't have to take any responsibility for what happens in the Biden-Harris administration. Or she says, the border has always been broken, but it was secure when I was there, except during an election year when Trump broke it. You cannot follow it. It's all illogical. She said she never noticed anything bad about Joe Biden. She's the nominee because Biden was bad. If you look at the Democrat reaction to this, they don't seem that happy. But I wanted to bring something for Jessica.
A gift for me?
Trump has now taken the lead in every single battleground state and is now ahead in the betting markets bigger than he ever has been so far. I will leave you with that, Jessica.
Thank you.
Well, since you invoked her name, I got to go to her next. Jessica, I mean, the goal for Kamala Harris yesterday, what was it, and did she reach it?
So the goal was to not satisfy anyone sitting on this panel. Partisans, people who generally know how they're going to vote, have their preferences. If there are any undecideds left, and I'm getting skeptical that there are many of them with 19 days to go, 18 days to go, or whatever, and maybe it's just between Kamala and the couch or Trump and the couch, I think she did accomplish that goal. Because those people, if they're voting on immigration, I could guess how they're voting. If they're voting on reproductive freedom, I know how they're voting. And what Kamala Harris needed to do was to show up, to look tough, to not get rattled. I would disagree with my very generous colleague who brought me a gift today about her looking presidential. I think she handled herself really well, and she looked like the prosecutor who has won a lot of elections in the past, statewide elections, and had a very successful career. I think that she did particularly well in prosecuting the case against Donald Trump's character. When she discussed the enemy within comments that he made on Maria Bartiromo's show and then struggled to clean up, or actually just refused to clean up when he was talking to Harris in the town hall. And clearly they have message tested unstable, unfit, lacks the competency to do the job and the character. And that's where she is leading by really sizable proportions. So 7 million people saw her last night. If even a fraction of them were looking to feel confident that she could do the job, I think they would walk away from that saying that she can.
Okay, and Judge, what did you make of it all?
When I watched her right in the beginning, she started pointing at Brett. She pointed at him throughout most of the interview. I found that very offensive. I thought that Brett did an excellent job of trying to get her to answer the questions. I think she was contentious. I think she made it clear that she has a short fuse. And I think that she filibustered. She was non-responsive. She was combative. And she was grandstanding. I think that even more important is the fact that her job yesterday in coming on Fox was to try to convince people to want to vote for her. There was nothing that she said that would make anyone want to vote for her, because everything was about not what she's done, but how terrible Donald Trump is. And those people have already decided, with all due respect, they're not the undecideds. Okay, and she wasted an opportunity to convince people of that. And I have two specific points. When she was asked about the transgender, the law that required the government to pay for transgender surgeries, she was spineless. She was weak. We all know what she meant when she said, I'm going to follow the law. And she said, well, it was the law when Trump was there. Well, first of all, it's not a law. It's a regulation. Second of all, none of those surgeries occurred during the Trump administration. You know why, Kamala? Because he fought them, and he fought the regulation.
But people got
hormone
therapy.
The first transgender surgery was during Kamala and Joe Biden's administration. Now, take responsibility, stand up for what you believe, and stop being weak. Second point, to say that Donald Trump is not fit is laughable when this is a woman who told the American people that Joe Biden was competent, she was the last person in the room, and that it was his ineptitude that led to her being the candidate for president of the United States. I mean, she has no credibility as far as I'm concerned. And I thought that she was very weak, and I thought that Brett did everything he could to restrain himself from a woman who wasn't interested in conversing.
One of the ways to ask that, and this just comes to me, and I'll turn it over to you, Greg, for whatever you want to say with your great notes, but one of the ways to ask the question of when did you know he was mentally fit could have been, did you feel comfortable asking people for their hard-earned money to donate to a campaign that when you knew he wasn't capable of serving the next 4 years? Mm-hmm. And then see how she would answer. I don't know how she would answer.
No. When Brett said, when did you first notice Joe Biden's mental decline, she said Joe Biden isn't on the ballot. Why is he not on the ballot?
Right.
Yeah.
Because of his mental decline. Mm-hmm. That's like answering, when did you know Epstein was a pedophile? Oh, on my fourth trip. Let me be very clear. She was a disaster. It was so bad, Doug Emhoff smashed his nanny cam. She lost her cool because she didn't expect the thing that none of the reporters have done, which is ask follow-up questions. She should have seen this coming. Stevie Wonder should have seen this coming, that Bret Baier was going to ask follow-up questions. She ended up with the look and the tone of a DMV clerk who wants to take her break, but you're waiting for her, and so she's just like, I'm not going to help that person. The best part of this, though, we edited it out. I can't understand this. When she said, you know what I'm talking about? And he says, no, I don't. He spoke for America.
He did.
We have waited 3.5 years for somebody to say, no, we don't know what you're talking about. Finally, it happened. I don't blame her for skipping tonight's Al Smith's dinner because, frankly, the Catholics might give her last rites. It was that bad. What else do I have? Oh, she was unprepared. She has no excuse for that. Right. She's lazy. There's a reason why she's in the witless protection program, because if this were a fight, most people would accuse her of throwing it. Seriously, how could you be that bad? How could you be that bad? And then the criticism that Bear interrupted her, he did what was given him. They created the scenario where he had limited time. She showed up late. They rushed her out of there. She did everything she could to eat up the clock. Under those restrictions, he knew that maybe he could get 3 or 4 answers out of her.